Liam had never seen a planet like this one. The sky was painted with shades of purple and orange, the sun casting an eerie glow over the war-torn landscape. Fires burned in the distance, smoke swirling in the thick, polluted air. He stood at the edge of a rocky outcrop, his pulse racing from the battle he had just fought. His uniform was torn, his body aching, but the worst of it was the emptiness in his heart. The war had taken so much from him. He had lost comrades, friends, and his sense of purpose. But something about this alien planet felt different. As he scanned the area, looking for any survivors, he saw her. At first, he thought she was just another casualty of the battle, another alien lying lifeless in the dirt. But then she moved, a faint groan escaping her lips. Liam's eyes widened. This wasn't just any alien. It was a vampire woman, he knew. The stories how dangerous they were, how they were feared across the galaxy. They were known for their strength, their immortality, and their ability to drain the life from others with a single touch. But there was something in the way she lay there that stopped him from turning away. She was alone, bleeding, and desperate, for reasons he couldn't explain. He couldn't leave her to die. Without a second thought, he rushed to her side, his boots crunching on the dry earth. The alien vampire's skin was pale, her sharp features delicate, despite the severity of her injuries. Her eyes fluttered open, revealing a faint golden hue that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. Please, ... hope ... Her voice was weak, barely. More than a whisper, Liam hesitated for only a moment, his training telling him to leave her. She was an enemy, a creature of darkness. But the look in her eyes, filled with pain and vulnerability, tugged at his heart. He knelt beside her, his hands trembling slightly as he checked for any immediate injuries. "You're going to be okay," Liam muttered, more to himself than to her. "I'll get you somewhere safe." The woman's lips curled into a faint smile, but it was quickly replaced with a grimace as she winced in pain. "You are brave," she managed to say, her voice laced with both admiration and disbelief. Liam didn't respond, focused on lifting her from the ground. Her body felt light, almost fragile, yet there was a strength about her that seemed to contradict. Her appearance? He didn't know why he was doing this. He should have left her, let the medics deal with her, or better yet, let her die in the battle. He couldn't just turn his back on her, no matter what she was. He carefully draped her arm over his shoulder, lifting her slowly, trying not to hurt her further. She winced again, but didn't protest. Her eyes fluttered closed, and she leaned into him, too weak to stand on her own. "Where ... are we going?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Liam didn't have an answer. He didn't know where they would go. His mission was complete. He had survived the battle, but he couldn't just leave her to suffer. He glanced around the barren land. The endless stretch of wasteland offering no comfort. "There's a shelter nearby," Liam said, his voice steady despite the uncertainty in his heart. "We'll find it." As they began walking, each step felt heavier. The weight of his decision pressed on his shoulders, and the heat of the alien sun made everything seem more exhausting. But he didn't stop. He couldn't, not now. As they moved deeper into the desolate landscape, the woman's breathing grew shallow, her head leaning against his chest. Liam's mind raced with questions. Who was she? What was she really like? The stories told of the vampire aliens' ruthlessness, how they had slaughtered entire colonies. But the woman in his arms was nothing like the tales. She wasn't a monster. She was just a person, hurt, alone, and in need of help. His thoughts were interrupted by her voice again, faint but persistent. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, her eyes barely open, her gaze focused on him with a kind of quiet curiosity. Liam didn't know how to answer. He'd never thought about why he did things. He just did what needed to be done. But this felt different. Helping her didn't feel like a mission. It didn't feel like something he was doing because it was his job. It felt like something he had to do. "I don't know," Liam said quietly, unsure if she could hear him. "I just can't leave you." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, the two of them walked in silence. He could hear her breathing, slow and steady, as if she were starting to relax in his arms. Despite the fear he had felt earlier, there was a strange sense of calm now. It was as if they had both crossed an invisible line in whatever had happened. Before it didn't matter anymore. Hours passed, the sun sinking lower in the sky, casting long shadows over the barren planet. Liam's legs began to ache, his body protesting with each step, but he refused to stop. He glanced down at the vampire woman. Her eyes were closed, her face serene despite the pain. She looked almost peaceful now. They reached the shelter as night fell, a small abandoned outpost hidden in the shadows of jagged rocks. The structure was simple, but it would provide them with a place to rest for the night. Liam carefully laid her down on a cot inside, her breathing still shallow but steady. He stood over her for a moment, watching her face, unsure of what to do next. "You're safe now," he said softly, more to reassure himself than her. The vampire woman's eyes flickered open, and she looked up at him with gratitude. "You," she whispered. "No one has ever cared for me like this." Liam didn't know how to respond to that. He wasn't a hero, and he wasn't doing anything special. He was just trying to do the right thing. But hearing those words from her made him feel something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. As the night stretched on, Liam sat by her side, keeping watch. His mind swirled with thoughts of the future. He had no idea where this strange journey would lead, or what would happen when she recovered. But one thing was certain: this was just the beginning of a story neither of them had expected. The shelter was quiet, save for the sound of Seraphine's breathing and the occasional creak of the building as the wind picked up outside. The night stretched long, and Liam didn't dare to rest. He sat at the edge of the cot, his eyes never leaving the woman lying before him. She had fallen into a deeper sleep after he carefully dressed her wounds. Now all he could do was wait. Liam's mind drifted back to the chaos of the battlefield, the flashes of gunfire, the screams of dying soldiers, the feeling of dread that had settled in his chest. It had been a mission like any other, and yet here he was, lone with an alien vampire. The war had been about killing, about surviving, but this was something different. This felt like a mission of its own, and he wasn't sure if he was the one leading or following. As the hours passed, Liam found himself lost in thought. Couldn't understand why he had done what he had. He had saved her, yes, but for what? Reason? Was it simply because she was a life no matter her race? Or was it because there was something in her eyes, a silent plea for help that no one else had seen? But then again, maybe it was the same thing that had always driven him: the need to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. And in that moment, Seraphine had been just that, someone in need. But that didn't mean he wasn't scared. She was an alien, a vampire no less. There were stories about them. Terrifying stories that made even the bravest soldiers shake in their boots. Liam couldn't help but wonder if he was making a mistake. What if she turned on him? What if the stories were true, and her vampire instincts woke up, causing her to drain the life from him? But as he watched her sleep, he realized he didn't care about that anymore. He didn't fear her. She was hurt, and she needed help. The sound of her soft breathing broke his thoughts, and he looked down at her. Skin, once so pale, now had a healthy, warm glow from the treatment. She was still unconscious, but her face was peaceful. She didn't look like the monster the galaxy made her out to be. He reached out, almost instinctively, and brushed a strand of her dark hair from her face. She stirred, but didn't wake. For a moment, Liam wondered if she had ever felt the warmth of kindness. If anyone had ever cared for her the way he was trying to now. "I'm not leaving you," he whispered softly, as though speaking to himself as much as to her. "You're not alone anymore." The words felt strange on his tongue, but they felt true. He wasn't sure what would come next, but for now, it felt right. His mission had changed. It wasn't about the war anymore. It wasn't about winning or losing. It was about protecting her, even if no one else understood. The first light of dawn filtered through the cracks in the walls, casting a pale blue glow across the room. Liam's eyes were heavy, but he refused to sleep. Couldn't. Not until he knew Seraphine was okay. After a while, the silence between them was broken. Seraphine stirred again, this time her eyes fluttering open. They were a striking shade of gold, though they seemed dimmer now, like the spark inside her was fading. She blinked a few times, her gaze falling on Liam, who was sitting at her side. Where am I?" she asked, her voice weak, but there was a calmness to it now. She seemed aware, even though she still looked exhausted. "You're safe," Liam replied gently, trying to reassure her. "You're in a shelter. You're going to be okay." Seraphine's eyes narrowed slightly as she processed his words. For a moment, there was a flicker of distrust, but it faded as quickly as it came. She looked around the small room and then back at Liam. Why did you help me?" Her voice was soft, a mixture of curiosity and confusion. Liam leaned forward, keeping his gaze steady. He could feel the weight of her question, the hesitation in the air. She wasn't used to kindness, he realized. She wasn't used to being helped without a price attached. But Liam couldn't bring himself to lie. "I don't know," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I just couldn't leave you. You were hurt." Seraphine's lips parted as though she were going to say something more, but then she paused. She seemed to be choosing her words carefully. "You should not have saved me, you know what I am. I'm not. Like you." Liam felt a pang in his chest at her words. She was right. She wasn't like him. But that didn't matter to him anymore. "I don't care what you are," he said, his voice firm, yet gentle. "I only care that you're alive." She seemed taken aback by his response, her eyes widening slightly. For the first time since he had found her, she looked at him not with suspicion, but with something else, something soft. She didn't say anything for a long time, just stared at him, as if searching for any hint of deception. But there was none. Finally, she closed her eyes for a moment and let out a small sigh. "Thank you," she whispered, the words barely audible. "No one has ever said that to me before." Liam felt a strange warmth spread through him at her words. It wasn't just the relief of hearing her speak, or the satisfaction of knowing he had done something right. It was the realization that, for the first time in a long time, he was doing something that mattered. And it mattered to her. He didn't know what would happen next. He didn't know how long they would be stuck on this alien world, or what danger might still be lurking. But one thing was certain. He would keep his word. He wouldn't leave her. "I'm not going anywhere," he said softly. "You're not alone. I'll stay with you until you're better." Seraphine's eyes flickered with something between gratitude and sadness, but she didn't argue. She simply nodded and rested her head back against the pillow, closing her eyes. Liam stayed by her side, his hand resting lightly on her arm. The room was quiet, save for the sound of their breathing and the soft rustle of the wind outside. The war was still out there raging on, but inside this small shelter, a new kind of battle was beginning. The days that followed were slow but steady. The shelter, though small and cold, was their refuge from the dangers of the planet. The outside world seemed so far away, with its battles and chaos, while here, in this quiet place, Liam focused on caring for Seraphine. Her injuries were healing, but it was more than just her physical wounds that needed attention. She had been alone for so long, abandoned by her own kind. For the first time, she had someone who cared, even if she didn't quite know how to understand it. Liam, on the other hand, found himself lost in a strange sense of peace. He had never expected to be here, with her in this alien world. At first, the idea of being alone with an alien vampire felt dangerous, but now it didn't feel dangerous at all. It felt right. Every day they spent time together. He brought her food, helped her walk around the shelter to stretch her legs, and even told her stories about his past stories that he hadn't shared with anyone in years. At first, Seraphine had been distant, her sharp gaze always calculating, as if she expected him to turn on her at any moment. But over time, she softened. She began to smile more, even laugh at small jokes Liam made about their situation. And though she never fully spoke of it, Liam could sense a change in her. A little spark, a little light, seemed to return to her eyes. One morning, as the two of them sat outside, basking in the weak sunlight, Seraphine turned to Liam. Her golden eyes were still faintly tired, but they had a depth to them now, something more than just survival. "You've been good to me," she said quietly, looking at him with a mix of gratitude and disbelief. You didn't have to save me. You could have left me like everyone else. Liam didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at the sky, the vastness of it stretching beyond them. His fingers traced the worn edge of his jacket as he thought about the choices he had made in his life. Being a soldier meant following orders, but this wasn't about orders. This was something else. I didn't save you because I had to, Liam said, his voice soft but steady. I saved you because you needed saving, and no one deserves to be left behind. Seraphine seemed to consider his words carefully. Her expression remained unreadable, but Liam noticed how her shoulders relaxed a little. It was a small change, but it was there. Thank you, she whispered, her voice carrying a sincerity he had not expected. It wasn't the cold acknowledgement she had given him before. This time it felt like a genuine thank you. She looked away quickly, as though embarrassed by the vulnerability she had shown. Liam didn't speak again, simply smiled and nodded. The silence between them felt comfortable, the kind that only grew when two people truly began to understand each other. There was no need for words. Every moment, they were becoming more than just a soldier and an alien vampire. They were becoming companions, survivors of a shared experience. The next few days passed in a similar quiet rhythm. They talked more, shared stories, and found small ways to pass the time. They didn't discuss their pasts too much, but the more time they spent together, the more Liam understood that Seraphine's silence wasn't because she had nothing to say. It was because she had been taught that no one cared enough to listen. No one, except him. One evening, after a long day of rest and eating, Liam found Seraphine sitting by the small window of the shelter. The sun was setting, painting the sky with deep reds and oranges. The wind howled outside, but inside the shelter, there was a strange sense of peace. Liam walked over to her, standing beside the window. He didn't speak at first, just watched the sunset with her. It felt like something important was about to happen, something that had been waiting for them both to realize. You're stronger than you think, Liam said quietly, breaking the silence. You've been through so much, and you're still here. That says something. Seraphine didn't answer right away. She just looked at him, her golden eyes softening. I've never been strong, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I've always been alone. Even among my own people, I was alone. I don't know what it's like to trust someone. To have someone who wants to protect me. Her words were fragile, like glass. Liam's heart ached at the rawness of her confession. He knew she had been hiding her pain for so long, burying it deep where no one could reach it. Trust takes time, Liam said gently, his eyes never leaving hers. But you don't have to carry it alone anymore. Not if you don't want to. Seraphine swallowed hard, as though the weight of his words was settling in her chest. She turned her gaze back to the window. But this time, Liam saw the subtle shift in her posture. She wasn't closing herself off from him. She was opening up. They stood there in silence for a while, both lost in the fading light of the sunset. Liam wasn't sure what would happen next. He didn't know if Seraphine would fully accept him, or if their bond would ever grow as deep as he hoped. But he knew one thing. He wasn't going anywhere. He had made a promise to her, and he intended to keep it. The following morning, after a brief breakfast, Liam decided it was time to try something new. He had been training for most of his life, fighting, running, surviving, but there was more to living than just that. He turned to Seraphine as she sat at the table, looking up at him in curiosity. Do you want to go for a walk? Liam asked. His tone light, as though they were just two ordinary people on an ordinary day. Seraphine raised an eyebrow. A walk? In this place? Liam chuckled. I don't think it matters where we are. It's about getting out, breathing some fresh air. You've been inside for too long. Seraphine hesitated, but then nodded, surprising Liam, I suppose. I could use the exercise. They left the shelter and ventured outside, stepping carefully through the rocky terrain. The air was cooler now, with a fresh breeze carrying the scent of the alien world. For a while, neither of them spoke, just walked side by side, taking in the quiet beauty of the land. For the first time since they had met, Liam realized that this was a new beginning. The world they knew had changed, and so had they. There was no turning back. But maybe, just maybe, there was a future worth fighting for. Days passed into weeks, and the small shelter had become their world. It was simple, but for the first time in a long time, it felt like home. The sky above them still carried the marks of a war that hadn't quite ended, but inside the walls of their quiet refuge, Liam and Seraphine found something they had both longed for: peace. Liam had continued his care for Seraphine's injuries, but now he found himself doing more than just bandaging wounds. He began teaching her small things: how to stretch and walk with confidence again, how to cook the limited food they had, and even how to laugh at the simplest jokes. For her part, Seraphine was slowly learning how to trust him. She was beginning to understand that not all humans were like the ones who had caused her pain. Not all were out to hurt her. One evening, as the sun dipped low, casting the shelter in a warm golden light, Seraphine found herself sitting beside Liam, both of them, watching the landscape stretch endlessly before them. The sounds of the wind whispered through the tall grass. For a moment the world felt still, as if holding its breath. "You don't have to keep doing this," Seraphine said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've been so kind to me, but I don't know why you're still here." Liam glanced at her, his expression calm but thoughtful. He had been expecting this question, though it still stirred something deep inside him. Her golden eyes were fixed on the horizon, but there was something different in the way she spoke now. There was no distrust, no walls, just a quiet curiosity. "I'm here because I want to be," he said gently, his voice steady but full of sincerity. "I made a promise. I won't leave you, no matter what." Seraphine didn't respond at first. Instead, she let out a soft sigh, her gaze fixed on the darkening sky. The weight of his words seemed to linger between them, filling the silence in a way nothing else could. Liam didn't push her. He understood that trust took time. He knew she had spent so many years alone, fighting and hiding from the world. It wouldn't be easy for her to believe that someone genuinely cared, but he was patient. He had time. He was willing to give it to her, even if she didn't fully understand it yet. Over the next few days, Seraphine seemed to struggle with her emotions. She would laugh one moment, then fall silent the next, her mind clearly wrestling with the complexity of their bond. Liam could see it, but he didn't rush her, simply continued to be there, offering her stability and the quiet assurance that she wasn't alone. One day, while Liam was out gathering supplies, Seraphine found herself in the shelter, alone for the first time in weeks. The room felt unusually still, as if it were waiting for something. She sat on the edge of the cot, staring at the walls, feeling the emptiness of the space press in on her. She had been avoiding these thoughts for so long. She had convinced herself that being alone was safer, easier. But now, with Liam's kindness filling the silence, she couldn't ignore the truth any longer. She had never known love. She had never known what it felt like to be truly cared for. Kept her distance, hiding behind her strength and her survival instinct. But here with him, everything was different. The warmth he gave her, the patience, the simple way he just listened to her, it was all so unfamiliar. And yet, it was exactly what she had always needed. But could she let herself accept it? Could she allow herself to believe that she deserved this? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps outside. Liam returned, carrying a few supplies, his face lighting up when he saw her. "Hey, I'm back," he said, his voice full of energy. Seraphine smiled faintly, though it was clear that her mind was still far away. She stood up as he entered, and for a moment neither of them spoke. There was something different in the air between them, something unspoken. Liam set down the supplies and glanced at her. "You okay?" he asked softly, noticing the distant look in her eyes. Seraphine hesitated for a moment, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't know how to say the thing she was feeling, the thing she had been avoiding for so long. But she knew it was time. She had to be honest with herself. And with him. "I don't know what to do," she said quietly, her voice trembling just a little. I've never let anyone in. I've always kept myself separate, always believed I was better off alone. But now it feels like I'm losing myself in all of this." She gestured around the shelter, as if the simple room could hold all of her confusion. Liam stepped closer, his gaze soft and understanding. You don't have to have all the answers right now, he said gently. You don't have to do anything. I'm not asking for anything from you. Here because I care about you, Seraphine, and that's enough. You don't need to push me away. Her eyes widened, and she took a step back, as though his words had knocked the breath out of her. But what if I hurt you? She whispered, her voice barely audible. What if I can't be the person you think I am? Liam shook his head, his face serious yet full of warmth. You're already more than I could ever expect. I don't need you to be perfect, Seraphine. I just need you to be you, and that's enough for me. The room was silent for a moment, the air thick with emotion. Seraphine looked at him, and for the first time, she let herself really see him not just as a soldier, not just as someone who had saved her, but as someone who cared for her in a way that was so foreign, it almost seemed impossible. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them away quickly, afraid to let them fall. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. How to trust again, how to accept help, accept kindness. Liam reached out, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. You don't have to figure it all out today. Just take it one step at a time. I'll be here whenever you're ready. Nodded slowly, her chest tightening as a wave of emotion swept over her. She didn't know if she could ever fully trust, if she could ever fully let go of the walls she had built around herself. But Liam was giving her a chance. And that was more than she had ever imagined. Seraphine finally allowed herself to breathe, the heavy weight she had been carrying for so long beginning to lift. Even if just a little? I'm ready to try, she said, her voice shaky but hopeful. Liam smiled, his hand still resting on her shoulder. Then we'll take it one step at a time, together. The days continued to pass, each one blending into the next in a quiet rhythm. The shelter, once just a place of refuge, had become something more a home, in a way for Liam and Seraphine. They had settled into a peaceful routine, one filled with small moments that made life feel less like survival and more like living. Liam kept up his duties, gathering supplies and making sure Seraphine was as comfortable as possible. He showed her how to prepare simple meals, how to make the most of the scarce resources they had. She, in turn, shared stories of her people, tales of their past, their struggles, and the secrets of her kind. The stories were sometimes difficult to listen to, full of pain and loss, but Liam never turned away. Seraphine had started to talk more, little by little. At first, it had been the bare minimum answers to simple questions or short exchanges, but now she opened up more, telling Liam about her life before the war, before the isolation that had been forced upon her. She told him about the love. She had lost the family she never knew, and the burden of being a vampire in a universe that feared her kind. It wasn't always easy for Seraphine to speak of these things, but each time she did, Liam saw a little more of the person she was beneath the strength and the hardness. She was a woman hurt, scarred, but with a strength that went deeper than just survival. One evening, after a long day, they sat outside once more, watching the sun dip low in the sky. The air was cooler now, the breeze soft against their skin. The stars were beginning to appear, tiny pinpricks of light in the darkening sky. Liam leaned back against the shelter, his eyes on the horizon. Do you ever miss it? Your home, I mean? Before all of this, Seraphine was quiet for a long moment, her gaze fixed on the stars above. The question seemed to pull her back to a place she hadn't visited in a long time. I do, she said softly. I miss the way it used to feel, before the war, before everything changed. There was a time when I had a family, when I didn't have to hide who I was. She paused, her voice thick with memories. But that was long ago. It feels like another lifetime. Liam could see the sadness in her eyes, the weight of the past pressing down on her. But he didn't know what to say, could never truly understand what she had lost. He could only listen. And sometimes that was enough. You know, Liam began after a moment, I used to think I had it all figured out. I thought I knew what I was fighting for. But everything I thought I understood just keeps changing. And now, I'm not sure of anything anymore. Seraphine turned her gaze to him, her golden eyes soft but searching. "You don't have to know everything," she said, her voice gentle. "Sometimes just doing what feels right is enough." Their words hung in the air, and for a brief moment, the quiet between them was filled with something unspoken, a sense of understanding that had grown between them, without either of them realizing it. Liam turned his head, meeting her eyes. "Yeah, maybe you're right." The silence stretched on for a while, both of them lost in their thoughts. Then Seraphine shifted slightly, breaking the stillness. "I've been thinking about something," she said, her voice still soft but more certain now. Liam looked at her, intrigued. "What's that?" "I don't want to hide anymore," she said. "I don't want to be someone who's always looking over my shoulder, afraid of what might happen if I trust someone. I'm not saying I'm ready to let go of everything, but I want to try. I want to trust you." Liam's heart beat a little faster at her words. He hadn't expected this. He had hoped, yes, but hearing it out loud was different. It was real. "You already trust me," he said quietly, his voice steady. "You've let me in, more than anyone ever has, and that's enough for me." Seraphine's lips curved into a small, fragile smile. It was the first time in a long time that she had smiled like that, genuine, unguarded. It made Liam feel something shift inside him, something he hadn't felt before. It was a quiet joy, a simple connection that grew stronger every day. As the days turned into weeks, they continued their new way of life. Liam and Seraphine worked together, shared their stories, and grew closer. But despite the peacefulness of their existence, there was always the knowledge that they were not safe forever. The war was still out there. Their enemies were still out there. One day, Liam was out collecting supplies when he saw something on the horizon movement. His heart skipped a beat as he narrowed his eyes, trying to make out what it was. It wasn't just a single figure. There were many of them, scattered across the barren land. Liam's mind raced. He knew they couldn't hide forever. The enemy was getting closer. It expected this, but it didn't make it any easier. He hurried back to the shelter, his pulse quickening with each step. When he reached the door, Seraphine was already standing there, her sharp eyes scanning the distance. She had felt it too. "We need to move," Liam said urgently, his voice filled with tension. "They're coming." Seraphine nodded without hesitation, her face hardening with determination. "Then we'll fight. Together." Liam looked at her, seeing something new in her eyes. It wasn't fear. It wasn't uncertainty. It was resolve. He stepped toward her, his hand reaching out to her. "You don't have to fight, Seraphine." "We can run, get away before they know," she interrupted, her voice firm. "I won't run anymore. Not from them. Not from anyone. We'll face this, Liam. Together." Her words hit him harder than he expected. This was it. There was no running anymore. They had both chosen this path, the path of survival, yes, but also the path of trust, of standing together in the face of whatever came. For a brief moment, Liam hesitated. But only for a moment. He had made a promise, and he wasn't going to break it now. "Together," he said, his voice steady, filled with a new kind of certainty. Seraphine's eyes met his, and in that shared look, they both knew that whatever happened next, they would face it side by side, and that was enough. The day was unlike any other. The air was thick with tension, a sense of impending change hanging over everything. Liam and Seraphine stood side by side, the quiet landscape before them now feeling ominous. It had been weeks since they had begun to truly understand each other, and while their bond had grown stronger, the outside world still posed a danger they couldn't ignore. Liam stood by the edge of the shelter, his eyes scanning the horizon. The enemy wasn't far away now. He could feel a tan unease in his gut, a warning that had become too familiar over the years. The war was still out there, and though he had hoped they might be left in peace, he knew better than to trust that. Hope. The battle had a way of finding you, no matter how far you tried to hide. Seraphine stood next to him, her posture straight and strong. Her face was set in a determined expression, her golden eyes looking out over the land, calm but sharp. The past few weeks had changed her. She wasn't the same vampire woman he had found lying helpless on the battlefield. She was someone else now, someone stronger, more willing to face what came next. Liam glanced at her, his heart swelling with something he couldn't name. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something close. They had walked through the hardest parts of this journey together, and that had created a bond unlike anything he had ever experienced. "Are you ready?" Liam asked, his voice steady but tinged with an edge of concern. They both knew that what they were about to face wasn't just an enemy. It was everything they had been avoiding: the conflict, the violence, uncertainty of the future. Seraphine turned to him, her eyes meeting his with a quiet strength. "I've been ready for a long time," she said softly, "but I couldn't do this alone. Not until you showed me that I didn't have to." Her words were simple, but they hit him like a wave. He wasn't used to being needed like this. Being a soldier meant that people relied on him in times of war, but this was different. This was real. So it was about them, about survival, trust, and the quiet understanding that they were both fighting for something bigger than themselves. Liam nodded slowly, understanding the weight of her words. "We're in this together," he said firmly. "I'll make sure you don't have to fight alone, not ever again." The wind picked up, ruffling their clothes, and for a moment the world felt still. No enemies, no battles, just a people. Standing side by side, ready to face whatever was to come. The day passed quickly, and as the sun began to set, the distant sound of marching could be heard. The enemy was close now. Liam felt his muscles tense, his heart rate quicken. It was time. There was no more running, no more hiding. "Let's go," Liam said, his voice low and determined. Seraphine nodded. Together they set out from the shelter. They moved quickly, staying low, using the cover of the terrain to remain unseen. Liam led the way, his senses alert, as Seraphine followed close behind, her steps soundless despite her alien nature. She was no longer the weak, injured woman he had found. She was strong no more than she had ever believed possible. They reached a small hill overlooking the enemy camp. Liam crouched down, his hand resting on the cool earth, his eyes scanning the movement below. There were soldiers, alien figures moving in a controlled chaos, preparing for something. He couldn't make out all the details, but it was clear they were preparing for an attack. Seraphine crouched beside him, her sharp eyes taking in the sight as well. "We can't take them head on," she whispered, her voice calm. "There are too many." Liam nodded, his mind racing. We had known this would be the case. There was no easy way out. He turned to her, his voice quiet but resolute. "We don't have to. We just need to create an opening." For a moment they both sat in silence, each weighing the risks. Liam had always been a soldier, trained for combat. He knew how to fight. But this was different. This wasn't just about surviving a battle. This was about protecting Seraphine, about protecting something that was more important than winning or losing. Something that threatened to tear them apart. "I'm with you," Seraphine said, her voice steady. "Whatever happens." Liam felt a strange calm wash over him at her words. He had never been more certain of anything in his life. They could do this. They had no choice but to. They moved swiftly into position, each taking a different route toward the enemy camp. Their plan was simple: create a distraction, draw their enemy's attention, and slip through the gaps. They didn't have to defeat the entire force. They just needed to survive this moment. Liam took a deep breath, his pulse steadying as he crept forward. He knew Seraphine was right behind him. As always, her movements fluid and quiet. They had been through worse, had survived worse. Together, they could survive anything. When they reached the edge of the camp, Liam gave the signal, nodded, and in that instant, everything changed. There was a loud crash in the distance, an explosion, followed by the sound of scrambling. The enemy soldiers scattered, confused, looking for the source of the noise. Liam and Seraphine moved quickly, weaving through the camp, staying in the shadows. Unseen in the chaos, they made it past the first line of defense, and for a moment it seemed like they might actually get away. But then a shout rang out, followed by the unmistakable sound of weapons being raised. Liam's heart skipped a beat. They were discovered. Without hesitation, he grabbed Seraphine's hand, pulling her into the nearby shadows. "Run," he ordered. Didn't stop. They didn't look back. They ran through the darkened landscape, their footsteps echoing in the quiet night. The sounds of pursuit followed, but they kept moving, faster, farther. Liam could feel the adrenaline pumping through his veins. He knew they were close, so close, they could make it. They had to. Seraphine's breath was heavy beside him, but there was no fear in her movements. She was focused, determined. She wasn't running away anymore. She was fighting for something real. And Liam was right there beside her, fighting too. They reached the cover of a dense thicket, and for a moment, they stopped to catch their breath. The pursuit was farther behind now, but they didn't stop moving. They couldn't. Liam looked at Seraphine, his chest heaving with exhaustion. But his eyes filled with something else, something deep. "We're not done yet," he said. She nodded, her eyes glinting with the same resolve. "No, we're not." And so they ran, together.